Welcome, friends and strangers alike. I got Jordan Peterson's new book, Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life, and I just read the first chapter and decided to come on and share my first impressions on the first rule. I'm going to read the part I liked the most, then I'm going to read a part I really didn't understand, and then I'll move on to a part that I guess I kind of found disturbing. So, rule one, do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievement. My favorite part of the whole chapter was the end. I'm going to read the last 2 pages. It contains an account of Christ addressing someone who, like him, has broken a sacred rule. On that same day, observing one working on the Sabbath, Jesus said to him, "O man, if indeed thou knowest what thou doest, thou art blessed. But if thou knowest not, thou art accursed, and a transgressor of the law." What does this statement mean? It sums up the meaning of Rule 1 perfectly. If you understand the rules, their necessity, their sacredness, the chaos they keep at bay, how they unite the communities that follow them, the price paid for their establishment, and the danger of breaking them. But you are willing to fully shoulder the responsibility of making an exception because you see that as serving a higher good. And if you are a person with sufficient character to manage that distinction, then you have served the spirit rather than the mere law. And that is an elevated moral act. But if you refuse to realize the importance of the rules you are violating and act out of self-centered convenience, then you are appropriately and inevitably damned. The carelessness you exhibit with regard to your own tradition will undo you, and perhaps those around you, fully and painfully across time. This is in keeping with other sentiments and acts of Christ described in the Gospels. Matthew 12:11 states, "And he said unto them, What man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, he will not lay hold of it and lift it out?" Luke chapter 6 describes him healing a man with a withered hand on another Sabbath, stating, "It is lawful on the Sabbath days to do good or to do evil, to save life or destroy it." Luke 6:9. This psychologically and conceptually painful juxtaposition of two moral stances, the keeping of the Sabbath versus the injunction to do good, is something else that constantly enrages the Pharisees, and is part of the series of events that eventually lead to Christ's arrest and crucifixion. These stories portray the existential dilemma that eternally characterizes human life. It is necessary to conform, to be disciplined, and to follow rules, to do humbly what others do, but it is also necessary to use judgment, vision, and the truth that guides conscience to tell what is right when the rules suggest otherwise. It is the ability to manage this combination that truly characterizes the fully developed personality, the true hero. A certain amount of arbitrary ruleness must be tolerated or welcomed, depending on your point of view, to keep the world and its inhabitants together. A certain amount of creativity and rebellion must be tolerated or welcomed, depending on your point of view, to maintain the progress of regeneration, the process of regeneration. Every rule was once a creative act, breaking other rules. Every creative act, genuine in its creativity, is likely to transform itself with time into a useful rule. It is the living interaction between social institutions and creative achievement that keeps the world balanced on the narrow line between too much order and too much chaos. This is a terrible conundrum, a true existential burden. We must support and value the past, and we need to do that with an attitude of gratitude and respect. At the same time, however, We must keep our eyes open, we, the visionary living, and repair the ancient mechanisms that stabilize and support us when they falter. Thus, we need to bear the paradox that is involved in simultaneously respecting the walls that keep us safe and allowing in enough of what is new and changing so that our institutions remain alive and healthy. The very world depends for its stability and its dynamism on the subsuming of all our endeavors under the perfection and sacredness of that dual ability. Do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievement. Welcome, Sigma. Hi, Daniel. Hope you're doing well. When I finished the chapter and thought to go live, I thought of 3 parts I would read and respond to. Like I said at the beginning, what I liked, what I didn't understand, and what disturbed me. And now that I've just read the first part, I completely forget what I was going to say about it. That does not bode well for this live stream. Glad you're doing well, Sigma. So I guess what I had to say about that wasn't important beyond I very much liked the way the first chapter wrapped up. I thought that was very well put. We'll see. If later it comes to me what I was going to say, I'll say it. If not, fuck it. All right. Here's the part I didn't understand. It's just one sentence. But as I read the rest of the chapter, it kept nagging at the back of my mind. Yeah, so this one sentence is, sanity is knowing the rules of the social game, internalizing them, and following them. I find that statement bewildering. That's not sanity, that's behaving. I can, in times and places, have full knowledge of the social game being played, internalize them, and follow them. But I can do so while not being in a state anywhere close to what I think anyone reasonable would call sanity. You could understand the social rules, internalize them, and be following them while experiencing angels and demons on your shoulder that nobody else sees. Okay, Sigma says, repeat that passage. And Daniel says, oh, hey, 2 more V's. Good to see you, brother. Maybe it means a healthy behaving. Yeah, so the sentence was just, sanity is knowing the rules of the social game, internalizing them, and following them. But you can absolutely do that while thinking, hi, Draken, while thinking that the people around you are reptilians or androids. You can be hallucinating angels or demons or fairies. You could be feeling floods of extreme emotion, anxiety, insane thoughts of self-harm, or I can have all kinds of insane shit go through my head. Be mindful that that's the insane side. Follow the rules and behave properly in a situation at times. That's just behaving, not sanity to me. I hear a lot of definitions of insanity that I feel the same way. Like when people say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different response. That's not insanity either. First of all, often that's practical. That's what lifting weights is. You struggle to lift a weight you can't lift. You keep doing that, eventually you'll be able to lift it. It's what practice is. You throw a dart and miss the board repeatedly. You throw it again, miss the board or completely. keep doing that enough, you'll start hitting the board. But also, there's always the factors outside our control. Like you might try to start your car 5 times and it just won't turn over. It's not insane to try it one more time. Sometimes a factor outside or just needing luck or whatever it is that makes the computer finally start working after trying the same thing over and over again. And I found a lot of people, I think a lot of people seem like, without articulating it, to be sort of instinctually to have that kind of a definition of sanity. So I've had many people tell me in one conversations that I seem like, they're being hyperbolic. Like I seem like the sanest person they know, and I keep calling myself a lunatic. Whereas when I then say, why do you think that? It's because of the way I am able to interact with them. But that doesn't make me sane at all. But then the other part I wanted to read, the part I found kind of disturbing as I thought about it. I want to read this, and with this, I am curious to get feedback. I don't know how long I'll stream and whether I'm going to take, whether I'm expecting the feedback in the chat. But this is something I will be very curious if people have thoughts on it. To read in the comments. So the chapter starts off with him talking about a client he'd had that was very isolated, and once he started having more social interaction, shit improved for him. So I'm just going to read part of this. He was the best personal and practical exemplar of something I had come to realize over my more than 20 years of psychological practice. People depend on constant communication with others to keep their minds organized. We all need to think to keep things straight, but we mostly think by talking. We need to talk about the past so that we can distinguish the trivial, overblown concerns that otherwise plague our thoughts from the experiences that are truly important. We need to talk about the nature of the present and our plans for the future so we know where we are, where we are going, and why we are going there. We must submit the strategies and tactics we formulate to the judgment of others to ensure their efficiency and resilience. We must listen to ourselves talk as well so that we may organize our otherwise inchoate bodily reactions, motivations, and emotions into something articulate and organized, and dispense with those concerns that are exaggerated and irrational. We need to talk both to remember and to forget. My client desperately needed someone to listen to him. He also needed to be fully part of additional, larger, and more complex social groups. Something he had planned in our sessions together and then carried out on his own. He had fallen prey to the temptation to denigrate the value of interpersonal interactions and relationships because of his history of isolation and harsh treatment. He would have had very little chance of regaining his health and well-being. Instead, he learned the ropes and joined the world. So this is something Peterson's brought up many times, and not just him. I've heard a lot of people talk about that we don't think properly unless we're talking to other people. And that just does not resonate with my experience at all. And it's something I've been thinking about this for years. Because a lot of great minds I really respect keep saying that you can't think on your own. You need to think in dialogue. And just the idea that isolation is bad. Like even in a prison population, being put into isolation as a punishment, that people go mad in isolation. And it's what I find disturbing about that is the more I think about it and observe, it doesn't seem true for me. Now, there's an exception. I'll point out the exception. If I'm having trouble with an interpersonal relationship or a specific situation in the world, I can find it helpful to talk with somebody about how to deal with that person, that situation. But even as I'm getting the information from them, because in conversation, obviously, is where you get new information from outside yourself, I will not properly think about the advice I'm given or the feedback until afterwards when I'm alone. When I'm with the person and talking to them, what they will get is my immediate reaction to that information. Like, but deeper thought on that information doesn't occur until I'm alone afterwards. However, both through just in my private life observations and in the conversations I have with people, I can very much observe it the way Peterson or anyone else describes it. I can really observe that in other people. That they seem to be able to think better during the active interaction. Let me see if I can get this thought. Okay. Where he says we need to listen to ourselves as we talk as well, so that we may organize our otherwise inchoate bodily reactions, motivations, and emotions. When I'm talking to people, or when I'm reading or listening to a lecture, what is happening is the thoughts that I've thought about on my own interact with the new information. And if I just continue to read and move on, or if I keep listening to the lecture, or if I keep paying attention to the other person, I can't fully interact with the thought. I find when I'm alone, I can pay attention to my bodily reactions as I'm thinking about something. I can observe what arises in my mind naturally that confirms the idea or works with it, and what arises that wants to argue with that idea. And when I'm alone, I can observe what emotional place those are coming from, what fears might be underneath that one argument. You know, that this perhaps denial of this. When I'm alone, I can observe deeply, and I can allow it to interact and form deeper understanding. But and in fact, when I talk to people, the times they find it most useful, like the conversation, is when I'm thinking absolutely the least. In a good conversation, I can fall into this flow state where I feel like I'm not thinking at all. I'm observing myself talk. And those are very, very consistently the times when people find me the most helpful or the most insightful. And for me, that feels like accessing something inside me that's already there, that I developed in isolation, and just allowing that to flow. The conversation and the feedback I get on that, I won't think about deeply. It just interacts with things I've already thought about deeply until I'm on my own. And I find that disturbing because I don't like observing that seems to be true for everyone else, but it doesn't seem to be true for me. And I keep fucking digging around at that because, like he says, what did he say later? That there's the temptation to denigrate the value of interpersonal interactions and relationships because of a history of isolation and harsh treatment. It really, really makes sense to me that I could be wrong about this because I appear to need isolation. Now, perhaps this comes from the idea that we need the social interaction and conversation to maintain our sanity. That I won't argue from experience, because I find people tie the two things together, that you can't think on your own. And I understand the point they're making. I observe it in other people. But that's also tied to that you can't be sane on your own. The idea that you can't be sane on your own, I don't argue with, because I don't have firsthand experience of being sane at all over the past decade and a half. However, I've found I can manage my insanity. I am a better insane person when I spend a lot of time alone. But when it comes to the thinking deeply and thinking properly, that one, no matter how hard I try to challenge myself on that to see if it's some sort of justification of my own weakness, it just does not seem true to me. So that's why I want to ask. So whether you're here at the moment and you want to comment in the chat or you want to comment after in the comment section, who agrees with the idea that you can't think on your own? I mean, not like in other people or as an objective rule. Who experiences that? That they think best when they're in dialogue with someone else, the way all these other people smarter than me say it is. Or does anyone else have the experience of you do think better when you're in isolation? And for me, it even improves the longer I'm in isolation. If you've only been alone for 10 minutes, you're not alone yet. The echoes of everyone else is still there. The more time I spend in isolation without communicating with other people at all, like days or weeks or months, the deeper I get into myself and the more fully I seem to think and experience. Does anyone else have that experience? And maybe it just is that, and maybe it's the point of sanity that's the sticking point. Because I don't feel like any of my isolation or any of the self-work I've done has made me any saner whatsoever. In this past winter, in fact, because like I've heard a lot from people that bipolar gets worse as you age. I've wondered this winter, is my bipolar getting worse? Or is it the interaction of outside circumstances? Because I've had very difficult outside circumstances over the past year that interact. And the first half of the winter, I was entirely thinking of it that way. Like, look, this and this and this were so hard. Of course, I'm hitting a point of suicidal depression that is more extreme than I've had in years. But as I rested and healed and like looked deeply at that, I'm not sure. And I won't know, I suppose, unless if outside circumstances improve or get back to where they were, like if there's not the outside stressor making my bipolar worse, will next winter be easier? But it has not been my experience that any of this has made me any more sane whatsoever. However, it has allowed me managing the insanity isn't even right. It's like optimizing the insanity. But also a lot of the other things he says in this chapter, like when he talks about, or like what Jonathan Haidt points out, the difference between left and right, conservative and liberal, the mine's more oriented towards order and chaos. I discovered all that on my own in isolation. It was back when I was much, much more isolated. Yeah, it was during the time when I was completely cut off. There was 2 years where I had no phone, no internet, no car. I didn't have any interaction with friends or anyone outside of like my parents dropping off supplies. It was during that time that just examining myself, I noticed all that shit. I noticed that all my leftist sort of tendencies were not like that, they were coming from personality traits and emotion. And I realized on my own that tear the fucking system down was so naive. And like in complete isolation, discovered the value of that very conservative mindset that before being insane, like the punk subculture denigrates that sort of conservative mindset. On my own, I realized how much society is an interplay of these two things, and that there isn't a moral superiority to either side. It seems to be simply a personality trait. Like that all came clear to me in isolation, not reading books on the subject. I didn't have the internet at the time. It was, I only discovered Peterson and all the IDW shit a few years ago. So when I look back on it, I really don't think like I'm lying to myself that I think better in isolation. That's where all my best thoughts, like that's where all my deep work comes from, extended isolation and really letting go of things. But yeah, I find that disturbing because I'm worried. Worried's not right. I'm just, yeah, is that just some sort of, is there some psychological damage beneath that observation that I'm not seeing? I'm not sure any of that's making sense to anyone. How long? I don't know how long I was rambling, not looking at chat. Okay, I don't know because yeah, I rambled for a while, so I don't know what you were saying this in reference to, but I'll read it and see if I can figure it out. Daniel says it reminds me of John Wayne Gacy, a monster who, looking like a regular nice citizen, but behind the scenes he was a real danger for society. That's a big topic. Oh, okay. So the sanity is understanding the rules and internalizing them and being able to play them out. Excellent point, Daniel. Because I was thinking more like of the perspective of the kind of insanity where you can be kind of in another dimension yet still understand that everyone else isn't in that dimension and have an understanding of the game they're playing. But yeah, Daniel makes another excellent point. Plenty of sociopaths and serial killers were able to continue for so long because they did completely understand the normal rules. They could follow them if they wanted to. Yet, obviously, they weren't anywhere near sane. So Sigma says, yeah, so we're back here on the topic of what is sanity. I think of sanity as a struggle to live in the moment and less in the imagination. My experience of insanity is twofold. One, to me, the way I think of insanity is like one part of it is extreme emotional states that are not necessarily in line with outside circumstance. So if someone you loved just died, it's not insane to suddenly plunge into deep depression. However, suddenly plunging into deep depression when nothing else, like when nothing like that has changed, coming off of my manic cycle, like to me, part of it is extreme emotions that are out of line with um, outside circumstance. And then for part of me, also, insanity is psychotic or mystical experiences. And for me, it's the internal world overtaking the external world. Hmm. And see, right now, like there's a thought in my head that's not in words. And I think that's also one of the reasons. Like there's a number of reasons I think isolation allows me to think more clearly. One is it's in the quiet with no other mind around interfering that I can pay the most attention to the multitude of experience going on simultaneously. Like I find mindfulness meditation, you learn to become more and more aware of what's going on in your head that you're unaware of, what's going on in your internal experience that you're suppressing or just aren't aware of. So I can sink into myself when I don't have to have a connection to the real world to be aware of another mind. And then just also that the small, still voice inside is much easier to hear when you're alone and quiet. MS says, haha, same. I think about this often. See, fuck. I wonder what thing you're saying's the same. Daniel says, I've been learning lately about cognitive distortions and cognitive dissonance. Yeah, those are fascinating subjects. Again, for me, though, it's extended time alone and careful observation of the self that reveals those things. And it's especially helpful to be insane as well, because I can see how I'm distorting reality when I'm manic and how I'm distorting reality when I'm depressed. My distortions of reality are more intense than before. They vary more. Sigma says, as opposed to autonomy, using the imagination for creative discernment. Okay, so I think now with Daniel's next comment, this is where it's, the interaction with other people. I like what you're saying so far. I think it's about healthy socialization. And yeah, excellent point. Daniel says, honesty towards myself is so important. I was learning this lately. Yeah, that's still my favorite thing of anything Peterson talks about, or Sam Harris as well, is when they talk about honesty. Tell the truth or at least don't lie. I think it's like universally important. It makes such a difference to tell others the truth. But equally, or perhaps far more so, is learning to be honest with yourself, which for me requires like an examination of the self without judgment first. And obviously you have to judge the dark impulses and whatnot when it comes to behavior. You have to judge what you're going to act on or not, or even you have to judge what you're going to think on or not. Like the last response video we put out where I was talking about Peterson's question on faith. Whether you're acting on that being is good, that God is good or not, changes everything. But if you can be non-judgmental, if you have the dark side that like me and Peterson have, if you experience the desire to judge reality as unjust, to become resentful, bitter, to turn against creation, in a way I find hard to put into words. You have to be non-judgmental of that impulse within you. Like it's, while also observing what that impulse will do to yourself in reality if you act on it or even build your thinking on it. I'm talking to you all right now, I'm realizing how much, I say this often, I've got something in the nonverbal part of my head that I don't know how to put into verbal words. That's also one of the reasons I like thinking alone for extended periods, because I can interact with the thoughts and the ideas and understandings within me that are completely nonverbal. Whereas obviously I can't bring that to a conversation properly. Okay, so 2 more. V says, I definitely do experience that, of it being better in dialogue. Okay. And MS says, yes, I feel the same way again. So MS, are you saying you also think better in isolation? And Sigma says they've experienced both states. Okay, Malenko is going to make a good point here, I think, just at a glance. It also depends on the character of who you're talking with. I am in solitude happily, if not finding authentic characters to interact with. That is a good point. As I read more of that chapter, because the entire chapter, that idea of thinking alone or with people, was in the back of my mind. I wonder what I could do if I had a close relationship and an extended amount of interaction with someone else like me, someone else who finds they usually think better alone. Because we are very shaped by the people we talk to. I could see myself becoming very, very different things if I formed a close bond with someone and had an extended conversation over time on deep subjects with somebody. Okay, Draken says, when I'm alone, I tend to split myself in two, and one part of me argue with the other. Maybe this phenomenon drive to some kind of insanity if you're permanently alone. Yeah, I find that as well. Like when I'm alone, more opposing parts of me can interact with each other. Yeah, being bipolar, I feel both, like two ways about it. Well, more than two, but yeah, I have two extremes for everything. Hi, Bravery. Okay, Sigma says, I suppose you might know if your sanity is increasing by whether you're observing more productive and pleasing interactions, living and dealing well with the moment. See, that to me does not seem like sanity. That just sounds, well, sorry, it could be. Like maybe someone else's experience is that, but my experience is not that I'm any more sane. I'm more mindful of how I'm insane. How do I put this? Fuck, I don't know how to put this. Hi, Rad Cow. First time here, welcome. Malenko says, Hi, Merc. I lost my sense of self being too much around people, which I discovered through solitude. Okay, so it seems like I'm not completely alone in this experience of actually finding that I think better in solitude. All right, Adela's going to set me straight here. Where did that? Okay. You need both. We need each other and quiet time. Isolation can be dangerous if you have wrong think and no one is there as a sounding board to check with reality. I suppose that's a danger people who are sane would have. But I went into isolation insane to begin with. And when I look at the way I live, it's all extremely dangerous. I in no way am saying that I think it's reasonable or safe that I live the way I do. It's very dangerous to decide to make all your own mistakes, to go into isolation, to interact directly with either delusions or with angels and altered states of consciousness. It's just gone well for me. And I mean, not objectively comparing me to someone else. Like if you compare me to a typical productive citizen, I'm an absolute failure. Nobody would want to go from, but compared to what I would be, what I started this as. Like Peterson often says, when you're walking down the street and you see a schizophrenic homeless person, like, yeah, we want to solve that problem, but we don't know what to do about that. If it wasn't for the good fortune and the support that I had that allowed me to go into isolation, like to have a disability check and to have my parents take care of both, like finding the place, renting it for me during those years of isolation when I was first beginning to learn to deal with being completely insane. Like my parents just cashed my disability check, paid my rent, brought my groceries. So there's an immense amount of support that allowed me to do that. If it wasn't for that, I would be, if I had had zero support from society or from family, I would be homeless or in a mental institution for sure. But I was able to properly cultivate my insanity in isolation with that support. Hi, Dust. Hope you're doing well. Dimensional says, the little voice is your worst enemy until it's your best friend, until it's you again. I like the way you said that. That's beautifully put. And Sigma says, do you think your examples of emotions leading to depression is having thoughts or the imagining of saddening narratives, imagined constructs? What I've observed in myself is different emotional states bring ideas with them. Like an emotional state is almost like a wind. Although really I find it's like a dimensional shift. Because everything changes if I shift into depression or mania. It's like I'm in a different world. It's like a Twilight Zone episode where the world goes cold and hard and meaningless. All the joys removed from everything. I find different emotional states seem to have their own opinions. And if you're not mindful of an emotional change in yourself, you know, the way you can see somebody yell that they're not angry. Someone becomes angry, begins yelling. Everyone else can see they're angry. And then you say, calm down, you're really angry about that. They'll yell that they're not angry. As ridiculous as that looks, the anger came onto them without them being mindful of it. They can't see the anger because they're looking at the world through their anger. It's like I've mentioned before, I heard John Vervaeke talk about an experiment you can do where put a cup on the table in front of you, get a pen, close your eyes, and tap the cup with the pen. And you'll find you can picture this, like you can see the cup through the pen. But then you continue to do that, and then just with your mind, instead of thinking about the cup, think about the pen. What you'll observe is your perspective steps back. You'll realize before you were looking through the pen at the cup, you were sensing the cup. And then if you just shift it, you'll notice you're no longer sensing the cup, you're feeling the pen. You're feeling the way it vibrates. You're feeling how long it is. So now you're looking through your hand at the pen. And I don't know if he took it back one further or if I did that on my own. But you can go back one further and you can observe your hand. Instead of observing the pen through your hand, you can observe that as the motion continues, you can feel how the muscles tense and how the hand reacts. To me, emotions and axioms or ideologies or thoughts, states of being are the same way. When an emotion develops, you can either look at the world through the emotion or you can look at the emotion itself. If you're looking through the emotion at the world, when it provides one of its thoughts, like obviously a suicidal state, everyone's been in a suicidal state, it comes with it by definition the thought that you should kill yourself. If you look at the world through the suicidal state, you will think that you are thinking that you should kill yourself. Whereas if you can become more mindful and observe the state itself rather than observing the world, or even you can observe yourself through the state. If I observe myself through my suicidal depression, I look horrible. I'm not going to share what it says about me right at the moment. I don't feel like bringing that up. But instead, you can look at the state itself. And when you do that, you begin to notice, okay, this state always brings with it this. So if suddenly it seems like your family and friends are all assholes, if you can observe, I'm thinking everyone around me is an asshole. And if you weren't thinking that yesterday or an hour ago. It's you've encountered a negative emotional state and you're looking at the world through it. Where, as if you notice, you're thinking that someone you love is a fucking asshole, then you can step back and check what emotion you're looking at them with and see that it brings with it those thoughts. And then if you can, through meditation or some, whatever method you found to alter your state of mind, to move into a feeling of gratitude instead, and then examine that person, notice how suddenly they're not an asshole. Okay, Dimensional says, even when you're thinking alone, someone else has thought those thoughts at one point. So you might be rethinking. When we restate or rethink, reframe ideas, are they new again? Okay, that makes me realize it's from one perspective that I think best in isolation. But from another perspective, I'm not in isolation when I'm doing that. Because I interact with things that may or may not be part of myself when I'm alone. I'm obviously interacting with things from my conscious mind and my subconscious. I'm interacting with those archetypes. But if the other entities that I interact with in isolation are actual entities, then I guess I'm not in isolation at all. I'm really tuning out. I'm isolating from other people within the physical world so as to be able to connect with a community of delusions, subpersonalities, or other entities in a non-physical realm, or perhaps interact with the collective unconscious. Because, yeah, I do all kinds of weird mystical shit where I interact with energies and entities. And so, am I really alone, or am I just interacting with a non physical social group? Hey, James. Good to see you. Thanks for wishing us all a good day. And hey, Sally, how you doing? Hey, Martin. Okay, Sigma said, what would be might the goal of sanity? I suppose we could observe if we are experiencing sanity by it manifesting in some way. That's what I was suggesting. Well, all right. So if I take that to a deeper perspective, because when I'm talking, when I'm at one level, there's definitely sanity and insanity. Like there's a difference between the average person, even though I know there's no such thing as a normal person, and like fucking extreme bipolar and schizophrenic. Like now, whether or not it's all delusions, or whether or not we actually tap into things, whether we're chaotic mystics or just completely delusional, is something we can't say from here. But I think it's perfectly valid to separate us into sane and insane in that way, where insanity is when you have internal experiences of things that the majority of people do not. Hear voices, see things. But then from another perspective, what I observed, like going into my isolation, Like at first, it felt like becoming untethered from reality. That before I was sane, tethered to reality, and that now that I was insane, I was untethered. I was dimensional shifting. I was all over the place. But the more I observed that, the more I realized that I wasn't directly tethered to reality before either. And even before I was insane, I dimensionally shifted. Everyone does. Even a perfectly sane person. If you're experiencing extreme depression for a perfectly rational reason, like a loved one just died, you shift dimensionally. Food doesn't fucking taste the same. Music doesn't sound the same. Colors don't look the same. You're not in the same world you were in before. Just before I went insane, I thought I was my emotions and I thought I was my thoughts. I was never observing my emotional state. I was observing the world through it. And even though the world would shift, I didn't notice because I always was locked into what I was locked into. So there's another perspective in which absolutely none of us are sane. None of us are directly observing the outside world whatsoever. We have no awareness of anything that is outside our own awareness. So we are aware of nothing but our own awareness. I realized that on my own. And then, like, yeah, if that sounds too mystical, look up, is it Donald Hoffman's work? He claims to have shown, like, scientifically and mathematically that I think like applying game theory to evolution, that an organism is guaranteed not to evolve to accurately experience its environment. It is guaranteed to hallucinate an interface that optimizes for fitness payoffs. So none of us are directly perceiving the outside world. We're hallucinating. And I'm not saying there isn't an outside world. I'm just saying we are not perceiving it directly. We are only perceiving our awareness's interaction with everything that is outside our awareness. Spartanonymous Dow. Hey, Merc, you're looking good. I haven't seen you in a while. Well, nice to have you stop by today. Lightheart, good to see you. Much lunatic love to you as well. And thanks for joining us, Levi. How you doing? Okay. Spartanonymous Dow says consciousness is a hallucination. No, that's not what I was saying, and perhaps I'm wrong, but what I'm saying is our consciousness hallucinates reality. That every single thing that you think of as reality is all your own hallucination. Consciousness is what produces and experiences that. And I'm not saying we produce it in response to nothing, although I have no proof for that whatsoever. How do any of us know that we're not the only ones here and that we're not dreaming all of existence? Just for me, that solipsism, it's not that there's any way to prove solipsism wrong. It's that that is not productive, I don't think. So I assume everyone else is actually conscious and that you're all conscious beings just like I am. And I assume that there is some reality here through which we are interfacing with each other. But what I'm aware of is each of us is living in their own universe that is projected onto whatever the fuck is there that we don't actually see. So kind of like imagine that reality is a movie screen we're each a projector that puts a reality onto that screen. And like one of the easier ways to point this out might be just to point out that if somebody's has color vision and somebody else has vision optimized for contrast, as Eric Weinstein likes to say, which other people would call color blindness. Obviously, you're both sitting in the same room, but each of you is experiencing the room differently. One of you is in a black and white room, one of you is in a color room. And the realization of this, if you combine it with solipsism, like can go very, very, very dangerous. But the truth is, the universe that each of us experiences, we are the center of our own universe. For me, everything to this side is on the left, everything on this side is on the right. The universe, as far as I can tell, I'm not aware of the boundaries. It's like it goes infinitely in every direction. I am the center of my universe. Everybody is the center of their own universe. But that universe is generated, it seems to me, from an interaction with something that's invisible to us, that we do not directly perceive. We hallucinate something projected onto it. Everyone else is doing the same thing. And if everyone is hallucinating the same thing, like if there were no such thing as people who had color vision, everyone would agree that the world is black and white. As soon as someone else can perceive color, because what the fuck is color if nobody's turning it into color? Shit. I don't know how to keep up that train of thought. I've got more to say, but it's all in the fucking non-talking part of my brain. The talking part of my brain's really seizing up. I'm not sure if this stream's over or not. I'm going to take a minute. All right, at a glance, I saw Spartanonymous Dow say, "You're making mad sense, by the way." All right, good. Or do you mean that I'm mad in the sense of insane? I'm making insane sense? Oh, this is easy to respond to. Lightheart says, Merc, took your advice about looking at things happening for you, not to you. It has really changed my thinking. Yeah, if you can stick to that, well, my experience is it doesn't just change my thinking, it also changes the reality that I hallucinate. It changes the world itself. Yeah, Sigma. Interesting how the most objective experience we can have is our own subjective one. Yeah, we have nothing outside. Levi says, I think there might be another London riot at this rate. I didn't know about the first London riot. I'm not very aware of what's going on in the world at the moment. Levi says, but I've been doing art all day. Cool. Terang says, have you ever experienced absolute being in the present? Yeah, I have found that place of just pure being. I think actually there's a wide variety of absolutely being present. There's that kind of meditation where you let everything else dissolve. Like, so you're not being aware of the world at all. You can just find this quiet, pure being, this empty awareness, that thing that experiences everything. And you can just kind of drop into that and lose yourself. Also, it's very easy in nature. We put up a couple videos of the chipmunks. One called Summer Moments Stored Away for Winter. In the summer, I like spending time out in nature. And there's a state of being where you're plugged into what's around you, but it's all just the pure sensation. You don't have any thoughts about any of it, where it's you feel what you're feeling. You see the lights, the sounds. Oh, and I can have it inside as well. There's that fucking wall. All right, I'm going to take another minute and then I'll respond to some more messages. I'll be back in a minute if anyone wants to hang around. All right, I'm back. Spart Anonymous Dow says, we all love to sleep and we're all afraid of dying. I don't agree with that. That hasn't been my experience. Well, I very much love to sleep. Haven't you ever seen a little kid obviously exhausted, insisting they're not tired? Kids go through stages where they don't want to sleep at all. They just want to keep experiencing the world. They'll get cranky and upset. And we're all afraid of dying. Not everyone's afraid of dying either. I'm not afraid of dying. I had a near death experience, which, sure, it could be all the fucking, like Sam Harris would say that uh, it's the experience our brain produces, like to transition out. It doesn't mean there is actually any existence beyond death. I would say it's just a hallucination you can have. Like people who've had near death experiences, whether it's that they've actually died and been revived, or like me, where they thought that looked so certain they were going to die, that you can have the kind of near death and out of body experience when a tiger jumps at you, or a bomb is falling right in front of you, or for me, like when a bus is about to hit you. For me, even though there's no way I can argue this, like logically, to someone who wants to be looking at it rationally, I can't say that that experience was fucking real or objective, but it felt more real to me than anything else. Well, maybe not. Like, it's in the top category of real. That was more real to me than the average day to day mundane experience of life. So, and I mean, not just people like us. There's people who found other ways around the fear of death. I'm sure there's the warrior path of, meditate on every way to die and face it in conscious, like through meditation and cognitive work. I'm sure you could come to the same experience. But there's plenty of people like me who it's not that we worked out our fear of death. It's that we had an experience of the near death variety, found it pleasant. Um, the majority of people who die and are brought back to life, or apparently there were, like in World War II, I think it was like 10% of all bombs didn't work. And a lot of fucking bombs were dropped. So there were actually a significant number of soldiers that this one guy did a study on. I'm not remembering who, it's vague. But they interviewed a bunch of soldiers from World War II who'd had the experience of, you see this big fucking bomb dropping and it lands right near you. So you should be fucking dead. But the 1 out of 10 that are does. Apparently a significant number of soldiers in that war had the kind of near-death experience I had when I turned my head and saw a bus coming. But the majority of people who have those kinds of experiences aren't afraid of dying after that. Kevin Smith talks about it, I think, like around his heart attack, and I think he talked to Rogan about it. It's not coming to me what he said about his own heart attack, but I'm remembering him saying that his mother had a near-death experience like that and said it was just wonderful. But yeah, I have no fear of death since that experience. What got me going on that? Anyway. Hey, Luke, how you doing? Lightheart says, changing thought changes our trajectory in space-time loci. Yep. Well, to me, that's what magic's all about. Thought changes a lot. It actually changes the self and actually changes reality. Dracon says we need some advertising? What do you mean by that? Lightheart says the wall might be a hallucination, but I completely understand the need for a pause. You're loved, my brother. We're here for you. Thank you. Martin says, hey man, how are you? I'm seeing you from Argentina. Buenos Aires. How are you doing? I'm low. Like my base mood is low. I'm still not out of my winter depression. Um, but I'm better than how I woke up. I woke up in the sort of mild suicidal state. I'm out of that. I'm low. My brain's starting to feel worn out from talking. What's it like in Argentina recently? Having a moment of gratitude for this technology. Because Levi's in the UK and Lightheart's in the States. Martin's in Argentina. I'm in Quebec. And here we are all together at the moment. Ridiculous godlike power. Thousands of years, all of humanity. Hearing about this would just think this is the power of gods. Because it's not even limited to this one-way sort of transmission. Think about what we can do with a Zoom link now. Faces from all over the world appear on this little black mirror in front of everyone. Drakon says this is getting metaphysical. I don't know when you wrote that, but yeah, that's one thing about insanity I find is everything's much more metaphysical to me all the time, even mundane moments. Like my perception of reality, whether I'm like, and this is consistent through all the other fucking mood changes, is I have become something fucking plugged in to the metaphysical all the time. Okay, Sigma says maybe hallucination is the less apt word. Illustration. I don't know. Neither of those is the right word, I don't think. I don't know what the right word is. Okay, Lightheart says my personal opinion is we are actualizing reality from a universal mind through Brachyian space operating on quantum physics. Could be. I don't know enough about quantum physics to tie that in. But yeah, I don't think it's a one-way flow, that whatever objective reality is just informs and creates us. I think it's a two-way process. Okay, I'm responding to old I'm just going to read through this quickly and try to respond to new shit instead, if I have anything left to say. I don't know if I do. I'm not sure if this is worth continuing. Okay, right after saying I'm going to stop responding, Luke said something great. Making me fucking go. Okay, at the moment I thought it was true, but it wasn't true. I was being honest in the moment. But then the very next comment made me want to respond. I'm afraid of dying, but I'm not afraid of death. Yeah. Yeah, when I say I'm not afraid of death, that doesn't mean like I'm not afraid of what the last part of life will be. There's plenty of very difficult and painful ways of dying. I am not unafraid of pain at all. I'm not that kind of brave. It's just from my perception, death is the end of all that shit. Death's taking us somewhere nice. Fucking beautiful, that near death moment. But yeah, dying can be painful. Okay, Martin says I reached here because, yeah, see, I'm just responding to everything now. Because I was looking for the book today. Hope we can have a conversation. Yeah, definitely. Did I put yeah, in the descriptions, our Discord. If you're not already part of our Discord, there's an invitation in the description, like a link to join our Discord. And that's where people who want to have a talk can write to me directly. And I did get the book because of all of you. The day Jordan Peterson released it, I had 2 people ask me if I'd gotten it yet. And like right away, people were already asking me about Peterson's new book because I'm running this channel. Started off Peterson's work. It's obvious people would ask me about it. Before that, I'd been thinking that I was going to wait a while before picking it up. But once I realized everyone was going to be asking me about it, I figured if I'm going to read it eventually, I might as well read it now. But yeah, once you get the book, if you want, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. And if you're up for it, it would be great to record like a podcast. Once we both finish the book, we could record a podcast for the channel if you're feeling up for that. Yeah, I like that, Lightheart. Death is a veil that separates us from a return to the transcendent. Glad you're doing well, Levi. All right, how far behind am I? Oh, I'm almost at the bottom. Christian asks, why are you in isolation? My first 2 cycles when I became bipolar, I got hit by a bus, went insane. Like, I don't know how to describe how fully insane I am. It's my first 2 cycles, my mania just went into complete psychosis. And there was none of this part of me. I was not mindful. I was just being. Well, I had to be institutionalized against my will. A few times I got dragged naked and bloody, handcuffed at wrists and ankles by cops, like marched naked into a hospital, handcuffed to a bed and sedated. And then I'd come out of the mania and go into just such a severe suicidal depression, I couldn't do anything. I would get fucking stomach cramps from not taking a shit. I would be so depressed that I could not put the effort into getting up and going to the bathroom for like days. And I would lie in pain, not able to summon the will to get up and take a shit. So after my second breakdown, because I got hit by the bus, went insane. And at first, people were saying, like, not just random people, fucking therapists and shit, were saying, look, you might be bipolar now, or, you know, with it being that I was predisposed to it and the trauma triggered it, or they said it's possible it's some sort of extreme post-traumatic stress disorder, in which case they felt that maybe with the right therapy and such, I could get back to normal. So when I first went insane, the goal we all set was to get back to sanity. And I was working with therapists and taking meds and I started training as a tattoo artist, like as a part of all that, thinking, maybe a job that's more artistic and blah, blah, blah. So I worked really hard to try to get back to normal. So when my second bout of mania started, I was in denial about the mania coming on. Like I couldn't face being insane. So I just fell into this. I'm fine. I'm perfectly normal. As I got more and more manic, got caught up in it. The second breakdown was even worse than the first one, as hard as that is to imagine. Traumatizing on my family, the way I was being. Just then, yeah, like my second mania built to where I smashed up a whole bunch of my own shit, like wrecked this fucking house. I was completely like psychotic break. I thought the world had already ended. I was seeing the sun turn to the moon, fucking all kinds of crazy shit. I remember coming to, like handcuffed to one of those fucking rolling beds in this back corner of a hospital hallway. Coming to grounded, like just sedated to fuck, grounded back out of that delusion, that psychosis. But anyway, second time I broke, like fuck, I broke. Like the first time too, and the government, like all the therapists and shit were like, okay, no, we're not trying to get back to normal. This isn't post-traumatic stress disorder. You're bipolar type 1. We didn't apply or anything for permanent disability. The government just like put me on permanent disability. And instead of anyone talking about rehabilitation or anything like that, everyone was, well, because it's like, fuck, I was that level of crazy that the homeless people you walk by who are ranting to angels, or who are just taking drugs or alcohol and fucking lying there. Like I'm that level of crazy. And I couldn't handle it either. I couldn't handle that I was insane. I couldn't face that. And the second depression was horrible. And so I went into isolation in defeat. I could not interact with the world. I had tried. I'd pushed myself out of the comfort zone, resisted the impulse to isolate first time. And I could not handle being alive. And my first cycles were 3-year-long cycles. With bipolar, you often get sort of a 2/3 depression, 1/3 mania. So both of my first 2 cycles, the depressions were 2 years long. I just couldn't handle anything. I couldn't handle anything at all. And for me, being in a mental institution's traumatic. When I'm in there, I fucking bewildered by the people who are in there voluntarily. Our institutions are a bad solution to a difficult problem. But sometimes you break so fucking bad that you just need to sit there and deal with whatever it is you're dealing with, and you can't be responsible for anything with the outside world. So sometimes you do need someone else bringing you your meal. Fucking that everything is just simplified. It's you don't have to think about where you can go or what you can do. I couldn't handle fucking anything. And I couldn't handle being around people at all. Is how I first went into isolation. And then I learned to thrive there gradually. And so now I don't consider myself in isolation the way I was before, but I do live alone. I don't leave my fucking property. The only times I've left my property this year were to get fucking dental work done. Or sorry, that was last year. This calendar year, Yeah, like we're talking 2021. I don't think I've left my property this year. And I'm in isolation for two reasons now. One is still I get anxiety in the real world. Like severe anxiety. It's weird. Like this kind of interaction to me isn't real. This is part of my weird imaginary world in a way I'm not going to try to explain right now. Interacting with normal society is brutally difficult for me. I get really bad anxiety when I leave my property. And like in my delusions, I have this area surrounded by fucking magical shields, and like this is my place of power. This is my delusional magical land where I'm in charge. This is my dimension. I have trouble handling the reality of society. And I either have psychic phenomenon or I have fucking delusions of psychic phenomenon and energy and shit. And I don't interact well with the mode of being people are in when they're in public. I like interacting with you lot in private sessions or the Zoom calls and shit, because like then you're being the real you. It's a fascinating soul that reveals itself. And our interactions are nothing like the kind of interactions people are having on the sidewalk. It's a different world. But part of it is the anxiety and all that shit. So in one way, it's a failure to be able to interact with the outside world. But simultaneously, I thrive here. And again, it could be compensational delusions. But it seems to me that God has a specific path for me. That the limitations placed on me are there for a reason and have led me to this for a purpose. I feel this is what I'm meant to be, and that this is going where God wants it to go. And I experience that phenomenologically as very, very real. However, I'm very aware that could just be compensatory illusions. Okay, Martin, I'm glad you like the idea of doing a podcast conversation about that. And thank you very much for the encouragement. Okay, so everyone can look forward to me and Martin discussing Beyond Order at some point in the future. So Levi says, I kind of laughed at JP's new book and thought, what will be his next book? Okay, so I have another 12 rules. I like them though. I get the gist, just like the first book. Yeah, I like Peterson's books. However, I often find he has certain rules I can't follow. But like, I agree with him. It would be better if I was fully able to interact with society in a normal way, even if I'm meant to live this weird, more hermity life so that I can do this kind of work with people. It's like it would still be ideal if that was coming completely from a place of choice. I agree with that. But I can't do that. I find some of Peterson's rules just go right against the grain for me. However, like I'm fully aware that I'm just fucking damaged in certain ways. And I love the way Peterson articulates things, even the things that I find I can't follow myself. I still love Peterson's articulation of it. And now, Elena says, call for the light in you so you will get some more answers to the things you are afraid to ask. Yes, I spend a lot of time interacting with things that you could call all caps light, which goes back to what I said earlier. That's one of the reasons I find I think better after a lot of isolation is I can connect to things like the light of God and interact with it in isolation in ways that I found very enlightening. Wow, we've been going for an hour and a half already. I'm in a weirdly foggy state now. I'm aware, yeah. I've used up a significant amount of mental energy. So I'm reading things that I just don't have the mental energy to respond to. So I'm going to take some quiet time for a minute. Hey, Nolan, good to have you here. And hi, David Miller. Sorry to hear that your first two episodes so closely match my description. That must have been hard. D says, if you are not NT, parentheses, neurotypical, not good looking, and don't have good genes, they come as a whole package usually, and a male. You are screwed, it's over. I would say that even if all of those things are true, and if you are screwed from one perspective, that there's one mode of being in the world that is not open to you because of that, I just wouldn't say it's over. I think there's a game everyone can play. And society may not recognize that role or provide it. And this is the more mystical shit talking now. I'm not going to try to back this up with rational arguments because that part of my brain's tired. But the mystical part feels like everything has its fucking purpose. And that even if somebody's so disabled, like some people just can never interact with the world in any way. Like that never speak, never the people who have to be cared for their whole lives, that all of them are undergoing something that is a part of the greater plan. And that no matter what seems limited to you, there's a reason you exist and there's an end for you to pursue, even if it means nothing to anyone else. Hey, Nerdy Bird. Good to see you. Wow. To see that you're here. Lightheart says, I've been trying to work with some young men that seem to be stuck in hopelessness, and they rebel against JP's rules, which is a shame because they could benefit from them. Yeah, I have the same reaction to him often, to tell you the truth. Because I'm just that personality type of the fuck authority. And there's something about Peterson's way of presenting things that brings up that inner fucking rebel. Because Peterson will lay out a rule, and there's a part of me that reacts to that with "fuck you, I don't have to do what you say." Like to the point where even with rules I agree with, that part of me will react that way when I hear Peterson lay it out, and another part of me like responds with, "But we have also our own reason, for instance, to believe truth is this ultimate thing." And so then that inner rebel in me kind of goes like, fine, fuck, we'll keep telling the truth, but it's because we want to, not because fucking Peterson told us to. I do have that inner rebel in me that reacts that way to Peterson. So I can understand why some people don't like him. A younger me would not have liked him. I realized the fucking confirmation bias and all that shit, and have learned to compensate for that. And so on the other hand, when Peterson's not talking about rules, when he's just getting like deep into, because at first it was just his maps of meaning and introduction to personality. I wasn't listening to anything else of his for the first few months that I discovered him. I liked when he was talking in depth about reality, but when he got to his rule making, that one part of me really flares up with a whole bunch of fuck you at Peterson. But it's just, I do that to authority. It's just, it'll do that to anyone who's speaking from authority. And people need different lessons at different times and places. Not everyone can hear the same thing. For some people, it's just a matter of time. Okay, David, this will be in response to when I said that it must have been hard if his experiences match my description. He wrote, you know it, but alive and more forged and wise because of it. I'm really glad you have that frame of mind. That for me makes a huge difference. If somebody's fucking insane, it's really, really powerful to develop a personal narrative where you don't take on the usual expectations people have for themselves. And you instead look at, how can I exist in such a way that all my difficulties are forging me and increasing my wisdom? My fucking talking's freezing up, and I want to say more on that. Because I think that goes really deep. If somebody's profoundly insane, being able to adopt that kind of frame, it's desperately useful, but I don't know that I can articulate it more at the moment. Nope, looks like it's quiet time again. Everyone take a moment of now, and we won't worry about being smart or understanding anything or figuring things out. We'll just let the moment be whatever the fuck it is. All right, Levi said, yeah, I think that the internet is like a global school playground with clicks, and this whole incel narrative really makes a lot of men feel they're not worth it and mega losers. It's silly. I don't know exactly what the world's like. Like I'm always saying, we fucking, even what we directly experience, we alter as we're experiencing it. But then on top of that, it seems to me we draw certain people to us. So people can have experiences of, oh, everyone loves sports. And someone else can have an experience of, oh, nobody follows sports because you draw certain kinds of. But anyway, I'm aware of that. So I'm not saying this is what the world is like. But from what I've seen of the world, it seems even beyond the incels, there's a problem with more and more people feeling like losers. And I think this is a twofold thing, which I find almost everything is. Like on the deepest level, when there's a problem, I try to attack it. No, that's not the right language. I didn't want to use that language. I try to interact with it from both ends at once. So if there's a problem in the outs, like I look towards solving the problem if I can, or if not, trying to figure out what the way to solve the problem is, or acting towards it if I've got it figured out. But at the same time, I also work on trying to accept the difficulty that is there in the moment. And so, for instance, if I was talking to somebody who's really concerned about losing weight, say somebody who's extremely overweight, it's really fucking bothering them, it makes them feel horrible about themselves. If they were receptive to it, I would advise a twofold approach. One would be to figure out, like in a very Petersonian way, what they could do to lose the weight. Figure out what would the ideal be if I could motivate myself. But then also look at how much am I actually willing to do, and then drop it right down to if you have to start with just every day walking once up and down the stairs, just start with that to form, like to drop it down to the tiniest, most minuscule thing, if that's all you can honestly manage. So on the one hand, I would work on that, but on the other, I would also work on accepting themselves completely and loving themselves exactly as they are, not with the requirement that, okay, I can love myself as a big fatso because I'm going to lose weight later. Find a way to love yourself now in such a way that even if you were never to make the improvement you're working on, you could still accept that, deal with it, and even find a way to still love yourself. Find a way to still have gratitude for your experience. So on the one hand, anyone who feels like a loser, Peterson lays out well the how to move forward on that in a variety of ways. But at the same time, there's the other polarity for me of to be completely non-judgmental, to go the Eastern route, to realize that you're but one wave in the ocean. And the way a butterfly flaps its wings and across the world affects the weather pattern, you're affected by every butterfly and every person who's lived before us. Like Daniel Schmachtenberger points out, well, we're not one thing. We are part of the greater environment. We're all part of one big fucking thing. There's one big play being written out. Sam Harris's arguments on free will, whether you like them or not, are worth considering. It's a place to look at everything where blame and judgment and reward all seem ridiculous. Like this is all just happening to us. And while that seems the opposite of like Peterson's shit about visualizing something and marching towards it, to me, there's a greater paralogical perspective that overarches that, like that Petersonian, define it, aim it, move towards it. And the Eastern Alan Watts are a part of the Sam Harris fucking. No one chose what the fuck they are. You're an interaction between your inner nature and outside circumstance, it seems to me, beginning to end. Like there, but for the grace of God go I. Or the poem Joseph Merrick liked. 'Tis true my form is something odd, but blaming me is blaming God. Could I create myself anew, I would not fail in pleasing you. Were I so tall could reach the pole, or grasp the ocean with a span, I would be measured by my soul. The mind's the standard of the man. I really like that. But even that, I find, doesn't go deep enough. There it's making the point on your physical presence. But I think when you go deeper, also to the soul and to the mind. Like I have that tattooed on my forearm. I've got Joseph Merrick, the elephant man's skull here. And I have just the 'tis true my form is something odd, but blaming me is blaming God. But I look at that metaphorically. And for me, I mean that in the shape of my mind, the shape of my soul. I feel grotesque and freakish psychologically, even though if I hadn't scribbled tattoos all over myself, I would pass perfectly fine for appearing normal. But for me, it drops back to that too. So the nature of my soul, if it's inferior, I would say the same thing. I appear to have been created the way I was. I don't see how I had a hand in that. And even the fact that I manage my bipolar as well as I do. I often discuss it as though I did things. I chose to do this. I meditated. I realized this. But to be honest, I don't feel like I did any of that. Like the part of me that's speaking now, there's a deeper awareness that is like, fucking, we're not doing this. All of it. This is just happening. Even the moment of, because I can still get caught up in my thoughts or emotions. I can be in a state looking at the world through it, and for a moment caught up where I realize the back of my head is saying, oh, why the fuck did this happen to me? And then I catch myself and I step out of it and I get mindful and I realize, fuck, okay, I'm overwhelmed by this and this circumstance. I'm feeling this suicidality. It's making my brain do this. And I step back and do that self-work. Even that seems to happen on its own, though, when I look deeply. This just all seems to be happening. Yeah, and obviously I hit another wall there. So, unannounced quiet time. Enjoy your now. Okay, and Lightheart said, "I'm sorry I'm not responding to more. I skipped some great stuff there. But my brain's getting worn out, so I may respond very sparsely." But Lightheart said, "Merc, I understand the rebel, but there is truth." Yeah. And so I recognize the rebel in me when it steps up. I don't just follow that. And for me, all my mystical and magical practices are to devoting myself to whatever truth is actually there that's beyond my comprehension. But a lot of my magical practice is about submitting myself to the rules of the higher dimension. I find it hard to interact with the rules on this lower dimension. I don't like systems and law and government and rules on the level of man. But the majority of my mystical practice is discovering and devoting myself to the rule and order and hierarchy of the upper realms. And that helps me manage the chaos of being bipolar. Trying to follow rules down here too much fucking sets all my shit off and makes it hard to manage. Lightheart says, Merc, I have felt of late that the trauma I went through has made me empathetic to the pain of others. It has given me an authenticity that can't be faked or contrived. Yes, and I am blanking now on on their name, but someone else earlier who said that they'd been forged and made wise by their difficulties. It's well, and like you said, you found it helpful to ask, why is this done for me, not to me? So it was that practice of asking, why is this suicidal depression happening for me, that led me to realize that it did greatly increase my empathy, my compassion, my ability to connect to others and understand others who are suffering. Um, and yeah, really helped me develop the authenticity and all of that shit. It helps to find difficult purpose in suffering. I wouldn't give up there, D, personally. You say there's no incel narrative, there's reality. It selects for the best genes. If you're male plus not good looking in 2021, it's over. There's no gym for your face, plus some can't build muscle anyway. I don't want to in any way deny your perspective and not say that there isn't something to that. But you might be surprised at who you might be able to find. No matter what it is that for us is our ugly face. If it's a psychological condition, if it's a physical disability, if it's being extremely overweight, being ugly, being just like stupid, you're really low IQ, whatever it is. I'm not denying that that can make it entirely seem like it's impossible. And I'm not even saying that it is actually possible for everyone. Some people will experience that there's something about them that is no fault of their own, that they have no ability to change, that means they will be alone forever. Because the reality is they'll never encounter the person who sees past that. But I do think it's possible. There's people who see past. And so if there's one thing you can't change, focus on what you can. And it may not make a fucking difference. Like if you, I'm thinking of the scene from Doctor Strange where he goes to find the guy who'd gotten healed, and the guy starts talking and says he was disabled in a way that the doctors couldn't fix, and so he thought, if my body can't be developed, what can I develop my mind? And so I went and found, some guru to pursue enlightenment. If there's something you can't fix, look at what you can do. Do that. And sure, maybe becoming a brilliant artist, accomplished in some way, or just being a really good person. Like doing your shadow integration, doing the best you can in everything you can control. Maybe you still won't ever meet anyone, but maybe you will. And even if you don't, at least you'll be better in the ways you're better. You can perhaps eventually find meaningful pursuits that while you don't have a romantic relationship, you are still able to have a fulfilling life. But also, perhaps even if you were to give up on romance and pursue that, like, fine, I won't have romance. I can't develop myself in this way. I will become whatever. Find some vision of something worth living for. Then you might be surprised. And that may shine so brightly that whatever that other factor is won't matter to the right person. And then Levi says, women don't care that much about looks. I have plenty of bad looking guys who have great looking gals. They make up for it in personality. I think the danger here is to ever generalize. So it's not that women don't care much about looks. Some women don't, some women do. Same thing actually for men. And maybe it's not the same proportion, but I think it's dangerous to generalize anything. Yes, there's usually the norm. Like for all these things, it's usually some sort of bell curve. So the majority can often be in one place, but there's always exceptions to the rule. Seems to me there's always somebody who experiences a completely different pattern. Okay, David, you're the one I forgot your name earlier and was alluding to you. So David said, beautiful poem. My episodes broke me and finally stretched me. My intimacy with darkness made me realize darkness is the background to light. It is love. You said that brilliantly. And I would love to expand on that because you're absolutely right. But my understanding of that is more on the non-linguistic side. And I even am usually able to put that into words. But at the moment, I don't think I can say that better than you just did. The deepest part of me finds at the base of everything, including suffering. Yeah, I just don't think I'm going to go any further into the incel thing. I think discussing that, especially with you having to express yourself in the comment section, which is very limiting. Yeah, I don't think the further discussion between D and Levi is productive at all. Like, not in this format. So I'm not going to go any deeper into that. I'll read what Lightheart wrote. This is a better focus, it seems to me, in the moment. Helping others yields dividends that can't be denied. Joy is such a gift. And so, if you find life extremely difficult and you can't seem to find any way to fix it, no matter what it is, whether you're an incel or someone with a disability or a mental illness, or you just feel like a fucking loser, find someone to help. There's always someone we can help because everything needs to be done. Like, to the point where there's even just puppies that need to be played with and babies that need to be held, old people that need someone to sit with them. There's people that can't lift something. There's simple tasks that can make the biggest difference to people. But also, people are lonely, people are confused, they're frightened, they're hallucinating a reality which is out of tune with other people around them, and the people around them don't seem to understand because they're hallucinating their own realities. And so, if you can't do anything else, if you can learn to be present with someone, then you can always find somebody that you can help. And even if you don't believe that will alleviate your own suffering, if nothing is alleviating your suffering anyway, say, fuck it. Today's going to suck either way, so I'm going to see if I can do something that helps someone else. And if you pursue that just for that fucking reason, and perhaps like I came around to that through the belief in God and shit, so you feel like you're doing what God wants you to do, but it doesn't have to be from that perspective. It can be a more rational, like, fuck it, if I'm going to suffer either way, I can't do anything about that. I'll help someone else in whatever small way. You might find relief in that, or some joy in that, or some depth of meaning in that, that actually helps you in a way that you don't believe you can be helped. All right, I'm caught up. I'll Martin says, no reason to diagnose other people that you don't know. That's not what this community is about. Absolutely. Yeah, that got heated, and I don't think there's any reason for it. I'm happy with both of you as individuals. You're just both experiencing very different worlds and seeing things from different perspectives. And it's not that I think both of you are wrong and I'm right. It's we're all wrong. That's what, whether it's depth psychology or Donald Hoffman's work or Eastern mysticism, it's we're all fucking wrong. We're hallucinating our realities, and it's easier if we can just let go of that arguing about what's real and just share what we're experiencing. But if as we do that, we keep in mind that we're wrong about reality too. I find even if someone tells you something that it turns out okay, like, because there is a more objective, like Sam Harris's point is real about there are the things that are objective facts. This becomes paralogical and difficult to discuss. But if you recognize that reality is a mixture of those two things, and I don't think it's as productive or as enjoyable to argue with people or to question people expecting them to give you the right answer to describe objective reality to you, because nobody can do that. Instead, the interaction I prefer to have, like for any of you who've talked to me, it's I'm never expecting you to tell me what the world's like, and I'm not expecting us to figure out what is objectively true of anything. I'm just interested in understanding what you experience of the world. And no matter how wrong somebody else is, if you can understand why they think the way they do, you will find that beneficial, even if what it is they're thinking, like in my experience, even if the conclusion they've reached is still obviously wrong to you, if you talk to a person like that in such a way so that almost like when you read a book and you're reading a character, you try to put yourself into the rules of the book. Like, you're not thinking there's no such thing as fucking dragons when you read Lord of the Rings. You're putting yourself into the fucking world where there's dragons. If you approach people that way, the way we approach fiction, you will find it rewarding to immerse yourself in someone else's experience for a while. And rather than trying to negate it, to just try to understand what it's like for them. Adela says, thanks for this moment in time, Mr. Black. You are loved and appreciated. Thank you. Your support here has been very appreciated. And thank you all for being here. Dimensional says Sam Harris is a waste of intelligence, sort of. I love Sam Harris. Again, I don't approach him. Same thing as with Peterson. There's things about Peterson that are not the way I live. In a way, you could say I don't agree with him because I don't act as if for me, but I love there's parts of Peterson I really vibe with, and just like 100%, and things I don't. But I love Peterson the way he is. In the same way with Sam Harris. Like, obviously, even my inner atheist subpersonality has basically become agnostic and kind of believes in God in that lowest sense. Like when Sam Harris was able to agree with Peterson's idea of a God that is the highest ideal of that shit. But I love Sam Harris's thinking on things. Even when I disagree with something he's saying or it's not what I can live, I love hearing his explanation of that mode of being. I see a lot of value in Sam's perspective, even though I obviously do not live according. Yeah, I don't see the, like, I agree with Peterson and Vanderklay and Pajot that, like, for me, it seems obvious it's better to take God as real and then to examine, well, what is God? And to be aware that's beyond our understanding. But still, I like Sam just the way he is. But also, I don't like, that's just a preference. There's other speakers that I don't enjoy listening to that are just as high quality. To me, this is all, I don't know. You don't know why you like what you like, and you like this show or that show. You like this food or that food. You like this idea or that idea. So I'm also not of the opinion that everyone should like what I like, or I don't dislike the things I dislike in the sense of if other people like it, I'm glad they like it. And if other people don't like Sam Harris, then actually, yeah, I don't want to talk about Sam Harris to you. And I don't want you to, just like with me, actually. If someone doesn't like me, I would rather not interact with them. And I'd rather they didn't come across my videos. And I'd rather nobody fucking bothers them with any of my ridiculous ideas. I think I'm all talked out. Oh, it's Gloff's birthday. Happy birthday, Gloff. I hope you're having a great one. Lightheart writes, a wise man once said, Mike, the issue is very rarely the issue. We all want to be heard, seen, and valued. All right, I streamed long enough for Gloff to show up and get all his birthday wishes for everyone. This feels finished to me now. But I'll leave it for another minute so everyone can finish spreading some love and wishing Gloff a happy birthday. Okay, and Dimensional says, how about Zizek? He has some interesting thoughts. Zizek fascinates me. Although I haven't watched that much because I cannot wrap my mind around his. Like, I don't know. I can very easily step into, and not that I'm accurate about Sam Harris or Jordan Peterson. I have no delusion that it's accurate. I have a misrepresentation of either of both of them that I can step into easily and start listening to them. Zizek, I've only listened to a little bit here and there. By a little bit, I mean, I'll listen to an hour of him a few times, and I find him fascinating, but somehow don't link up in a way. Fuck, it's hard to describe. He's interesting, but I don't know what to make of him. Thanks, Gloff. Much love to you as well. All right. And so on that note, everyone is here to celebrate Gloff's birthday today. Martin or anyone else, like, still watching at this point, if you're not part of our Discord, the link's in the description. And hopefully, as my winter depression continues to lift, I'll be able to handle more conversations and start recording some more podcasts with people. So if anyone is interested in talking one-on-one about whatever, how you're sorting yourself out, what you're finding, yeah, you want to have the kind of conversation I described, where we're not going to argue over what's objective or what's right. Where we share our perspective on whatever it is you're working on at the moment. Whether you want to discuss Peterson's work or Sam Harris's, or talk about what it is you're working on, how you handle mental health issues, if you have them. Yeah, any of the kinds of shit that you see me talking about on here. If you're someone who is interested in any of that and wants to record something for the channel, join our Discord, and I'm going to, without pushing myself too hard, um, try to start doing more of that shit. And possibly, I still do want to get back to doing lunatic patrols. I just haven't. I know I've been saying that for fucking weeks now. I'm still in a mode of, I've done some more private sessions, um, but I just haven't yet felt up to pulling the trigger and starting to do some lunatic patrols so we can get together as a group. But I would still like to do that soon. And so if you've never been to them before, I don't know if we'll be at like announcing them on YouTube or not when we do them. We might just post it in announcements on our Discord. So there's a link in the description for anyone that wants to be more interactive. All right. On that note, everyone, thanks for being here. God bless. Lunatic loved all.